There exists a silence more eloquent than any confession, a sanctuary within the human soul where certain truths dwell, not meant for the noise of the world, but for the quiet communion between the self and the infinite. The great Sufi mystic Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, known as Al-Sheikh Al-Akbar, the greatest master, understood this with a clarity that still reverberates through the corridors of spiritual wisdom today. He spoke of experiences so sacred, so profoundly intimate, that their very utterance would drain them of their essence, like trying to capture moonlight in a clenched fist. When the soul awakens, it does not awaken to noise. It awakens to a reality that exists beneath the surface of ordinary perception, a dimension where divine presence moves through the fabric of existence with such subtlety that only the purified heart can detect its tremors. This awakening is not a trophy to be displayed, not a credential to be brandished before the uncomprehending masses. It is a burden and a blessing, a gift wrapped in the gossamer threads of humility and discretion. The question that haunts every awakened soul is not whether they have truly seen beyond the veil, but whether they possess the wisdom to protect what they have witnessed, because there are secrets, 5 profound mysteries that must remain locked within the chambers of the heart. To speak them is to profane them, to share them is to lose them. And Ibn Arabi, who walked the razor's edge between divine ecstasy and human comprehension, knew this truth with the certainty of direct experience. These are not secrets of pride, though the ego will disguise itself in spiritual garments and whisper that silence is merely weakness. These are not secrets born of exclusivity, though the mind will rationalize that sharing wisdom is an act of service. These are secrets of preservation, of sacred trust, of the recognition that some gifts from the divine are meant only for the recipient and the giver. The awakened soul understands that true spiritual wealth is measured not by what is proclaimed, but by what is cherished in silence. Consider for a moment the nature of awakening itself. It is not a singular event, not a lightning bolt of illumination that transforms the ordinary person into an enlightened being in one dramatic instant. Awakening is a gradual dissolution of the veils that separate the soul from its essential nature, a peeling away of layers of illusion until what remains is so raw, so vulnerable, so utterly exposed to the divine gaze that protection becomes necessary. And the first form of protection is silence. Ibn Arabi taught that God hides himself behind 70,000 veils of light and darkness, and if these veils were removed, the overwhelming radiance would destroy the sight of any creature who dared to look directly at it. The phenomenal world itself is a mercy, a tempering of divine intensity, so that finite consciousness can endure proximity to the infinite. In the same way, the awakened soul must learn to veil certain experiences, not to hide them from God, for nothing is hidden from the all-seeing, but to protect them from the corrosive effect of misunderstanding, mockery, and the violence of incomprehension. The first secret that must never be revealed concerns the visions that arrive in the spaces between sleep and waking, those moments when the soul slips free from the anchors of the body and travels through dimensions that have no coordinates in the geography of the material world. Ibn Arabi received the entirety of his masterwork, the Fusus al-Hikam, the bezels of wisdom, in a dream where the Prophet himself placed the book in his hands and commanded him to share it with humanity. But the dream itself, the ineffable quality of that encounter, the specific textures and tones of that divine transmission, these remain forever beyond the reach of language. There is a fundamental difference between sharing the fruits of a spiritual experience and exposing the experience itself to public scrutiny. The awakened soul may write books, may teach, may guide others along the path, but the inner vision that gives birth to such wisdom must remain inviolate. Why? Because the moment such a vision is described, it enters the realm of interpretation. It becomes subject to the projections, judgments, and mental frameworks of others. What was living becomes fossilized. What was direct becomes mediated. What was sacred becomes spectacle. People hunger for the miraculous, for proof that there exists something beyond the grinding banality of material existence. They will ask the awakened soul to describe their visions, to recount their encounters with the divine, to provide evidence that the spiritual realm is real. But this hunger is often born not of genuine seeking, but of the ego's desperate need for validation. The awakened soul who feeds this hunger becomes an entertainer, a provider of spiritual entertainment for those who consume the extraordinary as a distraction from their own inner poverty. Ibn Arabi warned explicitly about the dangers of self-delusion and pretense in spiritual matters. He wrote that every human being knows their own inner state, and it is of no use whatsoever to present oneself to people as possessing a spiritual level that one does not actually have. But even more insidious than false claims is the tendency to cheapen genuine experience by making it a topic of casual conversation, by reducing the ineffable to anecdote, by trading sacred visions for social approval or admiration. The second secret concerns the specific nature of divine guidance that arrives not through grandiose revelations, but through the whispered intimacy of divine inspiration in the mundane moments of existence. This is what Ibn Arabi called the knowledge of the heart, a knowing that bypasses intellectual reasoning and arrives complete, whole, untarnished by the distortions of logical analysis. It is the sudden understanding that floods the consciousness while washing dishes, the clarity that descends while walking alone at dusk, the answer that presents itself not as a conclusion of thought, but as a gift of grace. This form of knowing is delicate, gossamer thin, and it cannot survive exposure to the harsh light of skeptical interrogation. When the awakened soul receives such guidance and immediately attempts to explain it, to justify it, to translate it into the crude vocabulary of cause and effect, something essential is lost. The guidance becomes contaminated by the need to make it reasonable, acceptable, defensible. And in that contamination, the purity of direct knowing is replaced by the poverty of second-hand interpretation. Moreover, sharing such intimate guidance with others creates a dangerous dynamic. Those who hear about it will judge it according to their own understanding, their own level of consciousness, their own fears and desires. They will project their interpretations onto what was given specifically to you, for you, tailored to your unique spiritual state and circumstances. Their well-meaning advice or their dismissive skepticism will create noise around what should remain clear. The awakened soul learns to guard this guidance jealously, to act upon it silently, to let its fruits become visible without announcing the source. There is profound wisdom in the Islamic concept of the hidden deed, the act of worship or charity that no one witnesses except the divine. Such deeds carry a spiritual weight that public acts cannot match because they are untainted by the ego's need for recognition. Similarly, the guidance that remains hidden, that is trusted and followed without fanfare, accumulates a spiritual potency that would dissipate if broadcast to others. The awakened soul understands that not every inspiration requires explanation, not every divine nudge needs to be defended or shared. The third secret involves the trials and dark nights of the soul, those periods of spiritual desolation where God seems utterly absent and the path forward is shrouded in impenetrable darkness. These experiences are among the most transformative in the spiritual journey, the crucible in which false foundations are burned away and authentic faith is forged. But they are also profoundly misunderstood by those who have not walked through their own darkness. When the awakened soul attempts to describe the dark night to others, several things can happen, none of them helpful. Some listeners will interpret the darkness as evidence of spiritual failure, as proof that the seeker has gone astray or lost divine favor. They will offer advice based on superficial understanding, suggesting prayers or practices that completely miss the point of what is occurring. Others will romanticize the suffering, turning it into a badge of spiritual achievement, as if the pain itself were the goal rather than the purification it serves. Ibn Arabi wrote extensively about suffering and its role in opening the heart. He explained that divine mercy reveals itself most powerfully in moments when the soul experiences the full weight of existence, when the names of divine compulsion press down upon consciousness until the heart breaks open and expands to receive the breath of the all-compassionate. This breaking is not accidental. It is precisely calibrated to the individual soul's capacity and needs. But when it is shared prematurely, before its fruits have ripened, it becomes simply a story of suffering rather than a testimony to transformation. The awakened soul who guards the secret of their trials protects not only the sanctity of their own process, but also shields others from the false comfort of comparison. Spiritual development is not a competition. One person's dark night is not comparable to another's, because each soul is unique in its constitution, its karmic patterns, its relationship with the divine. To speak openly about one's trials invites comparison, judgment, and the subtle pride that creeps in when we measure our suffering against others. Furthermore, there is something deeply intimate about spiritual suffering, something that cannot be adequately communicated through words. The quality of absence in the dark night, the specific texture of desolation, the way hope flickers and nearly extinguishes before rekindling, these are known only to the one who experiences them and to the divine presence that orchestrates them. To attempt to describe them is to reduce them, to flatten their multidimensional reality into the two-dimensional realm of narrative. The awakened soul honors the integrity of their trials by holding them in sacred silence. The fourth secret relates to the experiences of unity and the dissolution of the separate self, those moments when the boundaries between subject and object, between self and other, between creation and creator, become transparent or disappear entirely. Ibn Arabi's concept of wahdat al-wujud, the unity of being, points to this reality, the recognition that all existence is fundamentally one, that separation is an illusion maintained by the veils of phenomenal existence. When the awakened soul experiences even a taste of this unity, when they glimpse the reality that everything is united in the divine and that their individual self is like a wave imagining itself separate from the ocean, the temptation to share this insight can be overwhelming. It seems like the most important truth in the universe, the key to ending all suffering and confusion. Surely everyone needs to hear this. Surely this is the message that must be proclaimed. But Ibn Arabi himself experienced the danger of speaking this truth to those unprepared to receive it. In his famous meeting with the philosopher Ibn Rushd, the young Arabi responded to a question about the relationship between mystical illumination and speculative thought by saying yes and no. Between the yes and the no, the spirits take their flight beyond matter, and the next detach themselves from their bodies. This paradoxical statement caused Ibn Rushd to turn pale and tremble because he glimpsed, in that moment, a reality that his philosophical framework could not contain. The experience of unity is paradoxical because it exists beyond the realm of conceptual understanding. It cannot be reduced to statements like, "Everything is one," or "We are all God," without generating profound misunderstanding. Such statements, when heard by those who have not had the experience, lead either to intellectual confusion or, worse, to a false sense of realization. People begin to parrot the words without the understanding, to claim unity while still firmly entrenched in separation, to use the language of mysticism as a spiritual bypass for genuine transformation. Moreover, in religious contexts, speaking openly about unity experiences can lead to accusations of heresy, blasphemy, or dangerous delusion. The guardians of orthodoxy, who understand religion primarily through the lens of law and doctrine, cannot accommodate the mystic's testimony that the lover and the beloved are ultimately one. History is filled with mystics who were persecuted, exiled, or executed for speaking too openly about their experiences of divine union. The awakened soul learns discretion not from cowardice, but from wisdom, recognizing that some truths are meant to be lived rather than proclaimed. Ibn Arabi himself was masterful in the way he communicated these realities through symbol, poetry, and paradox, creating texts that could be read on multiple levels depending on the reader's state of consciousness. He protected the secret of unity by embedding it in language that revealed itself only to those prepared to understand it, while remaining safely opaque to those who would misuse or attack such knowledge. This is the art of sacred concealment, of honoring truth by protecting it from profanation. The fifth and perhaps most crucial secret concerns the specific nature of one's relationship with the divine, the unique way that God reveals himself to each individual soul. Ibn Arabi taught that God manifests through infinite theophanies, self-disclosures that are never repeated in exactly the same way. Each soul receives a theophany tailored precisely to its capacity, its temperament, its spiritual needs. Your relationship with the divine is utterly unique, unlike any other relationship that has ever existed or will ever exist. This means that the way you experience God's presence, the qualities of the divine that are revealed to you, the specific language of love that develops between your soul and the infinite, These are sacred intimacies that cannot and should not be compared with others' experiences. When the awakened soul speaks openly about their relationship with God, they invite comparison, and comparison is poison to authentic spirituality. It breeds either pride or despair, either a sense of superiority over those whose experiences seem less profound, or a sense of inadequacy when others' experiences seem more dramatic or elevated. Consider the nature of human intimacy as an analogy. When two people share a deep bond of love, there are things that pass between them, gestures, words, silences, that have meaning only within the context of their relationship. To expose these intimacies to outsiders would be a violation of the sacred space they have created together. Similarly, the intimacies that develop between the soul and the divine are meant to be cherished in silence, protected from the gaze of those who could not possibly understand their significance. Ibn Arabi wrote that the absolute is nothing other than what comes out outwardly, while in the very moment of coming out, it conceals itself inwardly. There is no one who sees the absolute except the absolute itself, and yet there is no one from whom the absolute remains hidden. This paradox points to the truth that every encounter with the divine is simultaneously a revelation and a concealment. What is revealed to you is veiled from others, and what is revealed to others may be veiled from you. This is not because God plays favorites, but because divine self-disclosure is infinitely varied, accommodating the infinite diversity of souls. When the awakened soul attempts to describe their specific relationship with the divine, they face an impossible task. Language itself becomes inadequate because the relationship exists in a dimension beyond words. The feelings, the knowings, the communion that occurs in the depths of the heart, these have no adequate translation into the vocabulary of everyday communication. And so what emerges is always a reduction, a pale shadow of the living reality. Those who hear the description receive only the shadow and mistake it for the substance. Furthermore, speaking about one's relationship with God can inadvertently create a template that others try to follow, leading them away from their own authentic path. Spiritual seekers are often susceptible to imitation, trying to replicate the experiences of teachers or guides rather than opening to their own unique revelation. The awakened soul who guards the secret of their divine relationship creates space for others to discover their own relationship, rather than imposing a pattern that may be entirely wrong for them. There is also the question of sincerity and the subtle workings of the ego. The ego is remarkably clever in its ability to disguise itself in spiritual clothing. It can take genuine spiritual experiences and convert them into fuel for self-aggrandizement, for building an identity as someone special, someone chosen, someone more advanced than others. When the awakened soul speaks about their relationship with God, there is always the danger that the ego has hijacked the narrative, that what appears to be humble sharing is actually unconscious boasting, spiritual materialism dressed in the garments of devotion. Ibn Arabi's warning about self-delusion becomes especially relevant here. He insisted that seekers must be brutally honest with themselves about their true state, that claiming spiritual attainments one does not possess is worse than useless. It actively hinders genuine progress. The awakened soul maintains a vigilant awareness of the ego's tendency to co-opt even the most sacred experiences, and silence becomes a form of protection against this subtle corruption. Now we must address the deeper question. Why does silence serve as the guardian of these 5 secrets? What is it about speaking that diminishes what should remain unspoken? The answer lies in the nature of spiritual energy and the way that attention shapes reality. Every genuine spiritual experience carries with it a specific energy, a charge that is meant to catalyze transformation within the soul that receives it. This energy is living, dynamic, oriented toward inner change. When the experience is shared, particularly if it is shared repeatedly or to multiple people, that energy begins to dissipate outward rather than working inward. It becomes externalized, converted from transformative power into social currency. The person who has had the experience finds themselves in the role of explainer, defender, or entertainer, and the experience itself shifts from being a catalyst for their own evolution to being a story they tell about themselves. The living energy becomes a dead narrative. Moreover, every time an experience is put into words, those words begin to replace the experience in memory. What was fluid and multidimensional becomes fixed and linear. The limitations of language impose themselves on what was originally beyond language, and gradually, the verbal description becomes what the person remembers, rather than the experience itself. This is why mystical traditions across cultures emphasize practices of silence and contemplation, not as a suppression of experience, but as a way of preserving its aliveness, its capacity to continue working in the depths of consciousness. There is also the phenomenon of energetic leakage. The awakened soul exists in a state of heightened sensitivity to subtle energies and the spiritual dimensions of existence. When they speak about sacred experiences to those who cannot understand or appreciate them, they encounter dissonance, skepticism, or appropriation. These responses create energetic disturbances that affect the soul's inner equilibrium. What was meant to be protected becomes exposed to forces that degrade or distort it. The silence that Ibn Arabi advocated is not a fearful withholding, but a wise preservation. Consider the example of a seed planted in soil. The seed must remain hidden underground, surrounded by darkness, while it germinates and sends down roots. If it were constantly dug up to check its progress or exposed to harsh light before it was ready, it would die. Spiritual experiences are like seeds that require the darkness of silence to germinate properly, to send roots deep into the soul's substrate, to eventually emerge as genuine transformation rather than superficial novelty. The awakened soul understands this organic process and resists the temptation to excavate what needs time to grow in hidden depths. But silence is not the same as isolation or the refusal to serve others. Ibn Arabi was himself a prolific writer and teacher who shared immense wisdom with countless seekers. The distinction lies in what is shared and how it is shared. The fruits of spiritual experience, the wisdom gained, the compassion developed, the clarity achieved, these can and should be offered to others in appropriate ways. But the experience itself, the private moments of intimacy with the divine, the specific trials and triumphs of one's own path, these remain protected. Think of it like a tree that keeps its roots hidden while offering its fruits to anyone who approaches. The roots are the source, the private communion with earth and water that makes the tree's life possible. The fruits are the result, the overflow of vitality that naturally occurs when the tree is well-rooted and properly nourished. The awakened soul offers fruits, acts of service, words of wisdom, presence, compassion, but keeps the roots hidden, protected from those who might disturb the delicate underground network that sustains everything. There is also a question of divine jealousy, though this term must be understood metaphorically rather than literally. God is not jealous in the petty human sense of wanting exclusive possession. Rather, certain aspects of the divine human relationship are meant to be so intimate, so particular, that they cannot be shared without violating their essential nature. It is like the jealousy that protects the sanctity of marriage, not possessiveness, but appropriate boundaries that honor the special nature of a bond. When the awakened soul guards these 5 secrets, they are honoring the intimacy of their relationship with the divine. They are saying, in effect, this is between you and me. This is our private language, our shared knowing, our communion that belongs to no one else. This is not exclusivity born of pride, but discretion born of reverence. It recognizes that some things are too sacred for public display, too delicate for casual conversation, too profound for the marketplace of ideas. The path of awakening is often lonely because of this necessary discretion. The awakened soul walks among people who are still asleep, who measure reality by material standards, who understand success in terms of accumulation and achievement. The awakened soul cannot speak their deepest truth to such people without being misunderstood, dismissed, or pathologized. And so they learn to live in 2 worlds simultaneously: the outer world where they function, work, relate on conventional terms, and the inner world where they truly live, where they walk with God, where they process the alchemical transformations that constitute real spiritual development. This dual existence is not hypocrisy, but skillful navigation of different levels of reality. Ibn Arabi himself moved through various social contexts, engaging with philosophers, religious scholars, political leaders, and common people, while maintaining an inner life of extraordinary depth and complexity. He knew what could be said in each context and what had to be protected. This is part of what he called spiritual courtesy or adab, the recognition that different truths are appropriate for different levels of understanding. But the loneliness can be acute. There are moments when the awakened soul longs to speak freely about what they have witnessed, to find someone who truly understands the landscape of consciousness they are navigating. This longing must be met with discernment. While it is true that spiritual companionship with others on the path can be invaluable, even in such relationships, certain secrets must be maintained. The sharing that occurs between advanced practitioners is different in quality from the indiscriminate disclosure that Ibn Arabi warned against. It is measured, appropriate, serving the mutual growth of both parties rather than the ego's need for validation. The modern world, with its emphasis on transparency, authenticity, and the sharing of personal experience, makes the practice of sacred silence even more challenging. We are encouraged to share everything, our thoughts, feelings, experiences, on social media platforms that convert life into performance. The idea that some experiences should be kept private is often interpreted as lack of authenticity or even as evidence of something shameful being hidden. But the awakened soul recognizes that this cultural pressure is itself a form of spiritual pollution, an attempt to reduce the sacred to the profane, to convert every aspect of existence into content for consumption. True authenticity does not require total transparency. Authenticity means living in alignment with one's deepest truth, and sometimes that truth demands protection rather than exposure. The awakened soul is authentic precisely by honoring the distinctions between what serves growth and what feeds the insatiable appetite of a culture addicted to disclosure. They understand that silence can be a form of integrity, that discretion can be an expression of wisdom, that the refusal to share certain experiences is itself an authentic response to their sacred nature. In the end, the 5 secrets that must never be revealed are protected not by willpower or discipline alone, but by a deepening understanding of the nature of spiritual experience itself. As the soul matures in its awakening, the question shifts from, "Should I share this?" to a natural organic discretion that arises from direct recognition of what serves and what hinders. The impulse to speak about sacred experiences diminishes as the experiences themselves become integrated into the fabric of one's being rather than remaining as isolated events that demand attention. This integration is perhaps the ultimate goal of the spiritual path, not to accumulate extraordinary experiences, but to become so thoroughly transformed that the distinction between sacred and ordinary begins to dissolve. When every moment becomes a potential theophany, when divine presence is recognized in the mundane as much as in the miraculous, when the heart remains in constant communion regardless of external circumstances, then the need to speak about special experiences falls away naturally. The entire life becomes the testimony and words become superfluous. Ibn Arabi taught that awakening means comprehending reality in its totality, from which perspective particularity and individuality appear like a dream. From this awakened perspective, the experiences that once seemed so significant, the visions, the guidance, the trials, the unity, the divine intimacy, are recognized as necessary steps in a journey that ultimately transcends all such distinctions. They were real and important at the stage when they occurred, but the soul that has truly awakened rests in a simplicity that no longer needs to categorize, explain, or defend what has been experienced. Yet even from this place of integration, the discretion remains, not because the experiences are still held as special or separate, but because the awakened soul has developed a natural attunement to what serves the good of others. Speaking about personal spiritual experiences to those not prepared to receive them does not serve their good. It may inspire temporary fascination or curiosity, but it does not catalyze genuine awakening. Each person must walk their own path, have their own experiences, develop their own relationship with the divine. The awakened soul serves best by embodying the fruits of awakening rather than displaying the process. This brings us to a final reflection on the nature of spiritual teaching itself. How can wisdom be transmitted if the deepest experiences must remain hidden? The answer lies in understanding that transmission occurs on multiple levels. On the surface level, teachings are shared through words, concepts, practices, and stories. This is valuable and necessary for those beginning the path. But the deeper transmission occurs through presence, through the silent emanation of spiritual state that flows from a realized being to those receptive to it. Ibn Arabi himself exemplified this multi-leveled teaching. His writings are complex, paradoxical, designed to work on the reader at various depths depending on their capacity. Those with eyes to see can find in his words keys to unlock their own experience, while those not yet ready receive whatever they are capable of receiving. The secrets are present in his work, but they are veiled, protected by layers of symbol and paradox that prevent premature or superficial understanding. This is the way of the true teacher, to share lavishly while simultaneously protecting what must be protected. The 5 secrets that the awakened soul must never reveal are in a sense not secrets at all to those who have had similar experiences. They recognize the territory being described without needing detailed maps. The protection is not from other awakened souls, but from those whose consciousness cannot accommodate such realities without distortion. And perhaps most importantly, the protection is from oneself, from the ego's endless capacity to corrupt even the most sacred experiences through pride, comparison, and the conversion of spiritual wealth into social capital. In the silence that guards these secrets, something precious is preserved. A space remains in the soul that belongs only to the divine and to the self in its most intimate aspect. This space becomes a sanctuary, a refuge from the noise and demands of the world, a place where transformation can continue undisturbed by the gaze of others. It is from this protected space that genuine wisdom emerges, not as something grasped and displayed, but as something lived and embodied, radiating outward naturally like fragrance from a flower that has no need to announce its presence. So the awakened soul walks lightly through the world, carrying treasures that remain invisible to ordinary sight. They speak when speech serves, fall silent when silence protects. They offer what can be received and withhold what would be misunderstood. They remember that the spiritual path is not a performance for others, but an intimate journey toward the divine. A journey that unfolds in the hidden chambers of the heart, where no eyes peer except the one who sees all, knows all, and loves all, with a love that requires no witness, no testimony, no proof beyond the simple fact of its overwhelming presence. This is the wisdom Ibn Arabi offers to every soul who stands at the threshold of awakening. Protect what is sacred by keeping it sacred. Honor what is intimate by maintaining its intimacy. Guard what is precious not from stinginess, but from reverence. And in that guarding, discover that silence itself becomes a form of speech, that discretion becomes a form of generosity, that the secrets kept in the heart shine brighter than any words could ever reveal.